5 o'clock.
Okay. Hello, it's
We're talking here.
So are we.
The chair's interrupting.
expert first.
What do you know about air travel?
Are we ready?
Are you ready? Hello, everyone. It's 5 o'clock.
You want to close the door? Alexa?
It's IETF 117 extra working group meeting. This note well, by participating in the IETF, you agree to follow IETF processes and policies. Note really well. The IETF strives to create and maintain an environment in which people of many different backgrounds and identities are treated with dignity, decency, and respect. Meeting tips. Make sure to sign into the session using the middle echo. Use middle echo to join the micro queue. So these are resources for IETF 117. So now agent bashing. So before the meeting, Alexei at RFC 49 base. So we already added other experts. If you would like to other topic, maybe you can use any other business. So any comments? If no, then we can continue. So first, we congratulate to authors for RFC 9122 and RFC 9394, RFC 9122, INA registry for civil actions, and RFC 9394, IMAP partial extension for paged search and fetch. So next item is RFC 9051 error. So let's share the. Hey, sorry. Okay. So, share. Okay. So some error. So maybe we pass one by one. First is maybe the two the words depreciated and removed. So there's some different. So any comments? If no comments, then we continue next.
So is there one errata or are there several?
Several.
On that first one, would you like that marked verified?
I'm wondering what you're doing.
Yeah, this is Barry. I would say held for document update. It says exactly what we meant it to say. The person reporting the errata has a different sense of what deprecated means than we did, and that's fine. We can revisit that at the point of the next revision. But
yeah, I think part of the problem in this case, I think I agree with you, but we were using deprecated in two different senses as well, so that was slightly confusing because some deprecated was still there, the other wasn't there. So that's why, I don't know. I agree.
Yes, but the sense of, if you look at the errata handling stuff, the sense of verified is that it's a technical error that would cause confusion. And I don't think this has anything to do with causing confusion. So held for document update, please.
So next is this.
Is there a number for that one? We need here.
670. Extra ID is 7343. Hmm.
Yeah, I messed up. I think that was the intent. I fixed them one case, but I forgot to, just omit it entirely. So that was the intent, but document doesn't quite say that.
But this, Barry again, I don't sit down, Alexei, because as I recall, the original 3501 spec, the space was necessary and the text was not. And it's valid for this version to make the space optional also, if that was the intent that we had. I just don't remember whether that was our intent or not.
I think so. At the moment, basically, the human readable part is optional, but you still have to have the space.
Yes.
So you have to have trailing space, which is not really visible in examples anyway, which is kind of a bit of a, and I don't think any clients really enforces this.
But the question was, did we intend to make the space optional with this revision or not? And I don't remember. Because that would make a difference in how we resolve the errata report.
Okay.
So
I think that's in the spirit of the intent. If the question were asked at the time, that would have been fixed, but it wasn't asked, if it makes sense. So
I'm happy with verified on this one.
This is Ken real quick. Outside whether or not what the intention was, I think making it non-mandatory or optional is a subtle enough change that even though there's a different capability that says this, we could have broken something, I think it's so subtle nobody's going to know about it and existing parsers are going to choke. But that's just my opinion.
You think the process will show?
I don't know, but I think I could. So my opinion would be leave the space and make the text option.
Could you start announcing names, please?
This is Pete Resnick. I don't think this should be verified because the response text is already optional. Because the ABNF for RESP text is in square brackets, all of it. So the only thing that is being decided, the errata is wrong. The errata straight up is wrong. The only thing that needs to be decided is whether the space was intended to be optional, which is a completely different errata, or erratum. But the erratum itself is not correcting anything that needs to be corrected this way.
This is Barry. That was my point about that it matters how what our intent was matters how we resolve this. We can edit the errata report and fix that. We just need to remember was our intent to make the space optional or not. And if it's not, then the errata report should be rejected.
That's right.
If our intent was to make the space optional, then we can make it verified after editing what's necessary. Or we could do that. I think we should, I think held for update is better because I think on the next revision, we should make the space optional. But I don't remember our intent here, so I'm hesitant to say that we intended to make it optional. So let's just say held for document update with the reasoning that next time we really should make the space optional because it's kind of stupid to have a required space and an optional body.
I think then came up, there were actually some RFCs with extensions published where there was no text after the square bracket and nothing kind of seemed to break. And then somebody spotted, oh, but you have to have at least space and at least one character after it. You have to have 2 spaces, which is silly. So yes, I think, yeah, hold for update is fine. I agree we need to fix this. Yeah.
Don't hold for update until we get you edited.
Daniel from Apple. Just want to say there are already servers that will not send a space and no response.
So you have existing practice.
You mean that will just say bye with nothing after it, for instance?
I don't know if it's specific to buy,
Well,
but for the okay, no and bad, we've definitely seen that.
So making the space optional would match existing practice, but it would be incompatible with the grammar that we've been using before. So I think held for update is fine. Murray, wait until we tell you how to edit this.
So next, ID is 77246.
Yeah, I can't read that. Somebody tell me what the gist of the change is.
Remove the last sentence.
So yeah,
Number
yeah.
is
So
present.
number, there's a number here, no number.
Oh, I see. If number is, oh, and it removes, so it's saying don't allow number off not.
Yeah, this is in the response, right?
No, that's not a response.
Remember, there is request part and response, and they don't match.
I don't remember. Yeah, there is a request part and the response part. They're similar, but they're not exactly identical. So that's why it's important to know which one it is.
But this is the text.
Oh, it says request.
It says request. No.
Right. This is Pete. So what this is saying is that the response repeated the offset from the request when it shouldn't have. So the request can be partial, but the response is not partial and therefore shouldn't have the number, and it was probably a copy paste error.
I looked at it. I believe it was correct. But I'm now not awake enough to actually figure this out in the room.
If the request has it, the response should most definitely have it, because if you have multiple requests for different offsets, you want to know what the response is for.
For binary?
I think binary also allows requesting offsets into it. So if you request something at offset 1,000 and something offset 2,000, and you get 2 things back, you want to know which one is which because the ordering.
Okay, let's take it to the mailing list. And somebody reminds me and Barry to look at this. Make sure it's... Is there more?
Okay. That's okay. Next.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Here is the IETF8.
Yes, the example doesn't match the grammar. That's should be accepted, verified. Yeah.
7323. Okay.
Although it should also say UTF-8 is not supported rather than KOI-8R is not supported.
Change the example.
So, Murray, edit the "it should say" part to fix that and make it verified.
What was that? It shouldn't say UTF-8?
No.
UTF-8 is always supported.
Oh.
The bed-chart set, whatever follows bed-chart set should follow match the text basically. It's KOR8R.
The parameter on bad char set doesn't match the comment on the end. So
Okay. Next. So first sentence said there should have a unique identifiers, but the last sentence said never.
I think I suggested text on the mailing list.
well, but
But we need to fix the errata to say what it should say.
Yes. The intent of somebody wanted to clarify what before this became RFC, somebody wanted to clarify that you cannot mix message numbers and UID in the same sequence set. So it's either one or the other. And the intent of the sentence that was added was to say that, except for it didn't say that. I suggested on the mailing list what it should say, yes, but I don't remember what I suggested.
yeah, but this one was well discussed on the mailing list. We don't really need to talk about it here. It's go to the mailing list and see what you need to do.
Okay.
I don't know if it's I think, do the errata reports go to the working group mailing list?
Yes.
Okay, then it should be very easy to find.
We're getting notifications of the ones he's verifying as he's here.
Okay. That's okay for this topic.
Just let me know when you got the right text.
So
And there was something else that Ken was asking me about recently. So anyway, I think I suggested that maybe we should publish in BIS draft and fold this in.
Yeah, so in the process of writing up a potential IMAP snooze command, I realized that the ABNF for UID commands is basically hard-coded to include the list. So if you are adding a new UID command such as UID snooze, you need to redefine UID in its entirety in your spec. So my suggestion with Alexi was, yeah, my suggestion, Alexi, was to fix the ABNF so an extension can just say /equals and add whatever the next command is going to be. And we do that for selected commands and you know.
It's kind of the same comment as a message ID internal, very similar.
Okay. Next item is IMAP GMAP access. So this is actually already finished last call. So no bigger comments. So but it need more implementations. But currently I think there are very few implementations. So next is a IMAP in progress. So who is speaking for this topic?
Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
It's-
You can speak.
It's Marco Bettini from Open Exchange, the Dovecot team. and thank you to the extra group for adopting the draft. The last uploaded draft contains all the comments, it tries to address all the comments that have been done in IETF 117. The only point which is pending currently is a difference of positions between, I think, Peter Resnick, which asked to have a capability subject to the enable command, and let me find the name, and Lyndon, who instead was opposing to the idea of another capability. So my position, which is the one that addressed in the draft, is to have a simple capability without the enable, so that the clients can be informed when the feature is present, but without requesting it. And anyway, in the moment the feature is not is present, it emits a response code which can be tolerated by the catch-all syntax in any case. So clients should be able to ignore it without breaking. That is all for my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Action.
Yeah, I'm not. We need to get closure on this. I don't feel very strongly. I think still having capability is still useful, but as you say, you don't need to have it. The clients will still work. Yeah, I don't feel strongly about whether we should remove it as a capability name or keep it.
The idea was that if you have a capability, a client can know immediately that it will receive updates rather than getting an update if it is needed after some time. So I think having a capability can have its merit. The point in not requesting an enable was to avoid more complicated interactions to actually use it.
Okay, so do you think clients will possibly change timeouts, or how many messages they feed into different commands based on seeing this capability?
They could decide to show or not show information to the user from the beginning based on the presence of the capability.
Okay.
Because if you have a timeout which is in several seconds, you can start with the dialogue rather than starting without and then catching up. That's the point. Also, it can have more merit for non-interactive clients, which can receive the information and know reliably that it will be sent. That was the idea.
Okay. I think keeping it is fine. Again, don't feel very strongly.
Okay. So if no further comments, a new version of draft is needed. So now move to next topic. Message limit. MF message limit. Okay, message limit. This one?
Yep.
Okay.
So my apologies for late update to the draft. I had some pending changes in June, and then I got too busy. So it was based on various feedbacks and things I realized that were either missing or bugs found. So I thought I'll push it out. So anyway, this was split off from partial, used to be a single document. As written, this affects fetch, search, store, copy, move, expunge, and append. And it has examples both with by itself and how it interacts with various other extensions. Next slide. Thank you. So I appreciate that the first line of the change is something that we'll be discussing probably, but at the moment there is no enable message limit, so this was taken out. Copy and UID copy are now failing unconditionally, so there is no partial failure. And there is a comment that it doesn't affect move. Move allows partial movement of message, so it's fine. There were some loose ends. Search res, which allows saving search results in a variable on the server, was updated to make sure, to say that if message limit isn't enforced, then it will be truncated. I also realized that the document didn't say anything about expunge. So to match everything else that was added. And then Timo pointed out that if there is if the server supports multi-append, which allows multiple messages to be appended at once, it will limit will apply to that the same way as it applies to copy. And then Arndt pointed out that I didn't define UID after and UID before correctly. I had off by one error in both. So next slide. Okay, so Thibaut request said that he probably will implement this only affecting copy and for copy and append, but not necessarily for like fetch, search, and other. He asked for new capability. Initially, I was kind of a bit skeptical, but on the second thought, maybe it's okay.
This is Barry. I don't see, if the client doesn't have to ask for it and the server is just unilaterally doing it, I don't see that we need a separate capability. Because the things that the server doesn't enforce it on will just work, and the client doesn't really need to know that the server isn't going to enforce it on those. They just have to be alerted that the server might enforce it sometimes. I don't see that we need a new capability.
I think in this case, it's if you know you cannot copy 10,000 messages, you shouldn't bother trying.
I understand, but why do you need to know that it's not all? The separate capability will tell you that you can't copy and append, but you can do other things.
That it doesn't affect search and fetch, yes.
Right, and I don't know that you need to know that. I don't know.
Are you're saying you don't need to know the difference?
Right.
Okay,
that's what I think.
I think what you are saying is
It's
we can have the same capability and have two different implementations. Some might enforce it on search and fetch.
Yes.
And others not.
So I think we can just word it that it's always enforced on copy and append, and it might also be enforced on these other commands, and just leave it at that. Keep it simpler.
Okay. Philip?
Yeah, this is Philip Tao. I think having limits on copy and append and having limits on UID fetch it would be good for MUAs to know upfront, because MUAs may need to make separate decisions for each of those things, right? So knowing whether you need to have smaller batches for copies is different than your syncing strategy using UID fetch if you can do, 1 star, or if you need to do those in batches as well. So I feel like it makes sense for those to just be separate capabilities.
This is Ken. I was going to agree with Barry, but I think Phil may have convinced me otherwise on the separate capability. But I'm also wondering why move is being differentiated from copy. Is this just because copy and append are creating more data in the system? Or is this just, are we looking at limiting the overall number of actions that can be taken at one time?
Good point. I haven't thought about this. I think we need to ask Timo whether he wants move to be included in this set or not.
I think the distinction needs to be made. Is this limiting the number of operations or the amount of data that's being added to the system at one time?
This is Barry, and on the other question, I'll defer to the actual client developers to answer that. So thanks for the comment. But on the difference between move and copy, the thing is that move already allows non-atomic moves. So I think the key is that copy and append have to be atomic, and that's why he makes the distinction.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So I think I'm hearing weak preference to adding a separate capability in case. Okay, fine. That should be relatively easy. Go on.
Daniel again. One thing that we from the client find problematic about some of this is that it's just being enforced. And if the server, for example, thinks, hey, you shouldn't copy more than 10,000 messages, but the client logic is that we copy 11,000 messages, the client will just break, because it's not a message it's not the user it's not something that the user can make a decision about. It's usually app
Correct.
logic that's further down. And something like this will in most cases just mean that the client, it could be old versions that can't be updated, that they will just stop working. And so it's just making people aware that if a server does this, all clients will probably stop working. Because
in some cases, absolutely.
There's no way for a client to, if we get a no on a copy, then it's like, well, what do we do?
Right. The client, yes. If it's an extended client that doesn't know, it's kind of.
And all kinds of things could happen.
Yeah.
Because nobody has tested for a scenario where that returns no. So just,
Barry, I think that the part of the issue is that some servers are already making this limit and they just can't announce it. So this is codifying the announcement and the details of how to do it. So those clients would already break. But I think we do need text in there warning servers that there are clients who are expecting the stuff to work. And if they need to do that, they need to be careful about it.
Yes, I was also planning to add a section that that explains what the effect is going to be on unextended clients. So kind of to spell it out.
This is Philip again. I think for the copy, yes, it's true that there's already servers that enforce these kinds of limits, and you can already return a limit response code, and I think message limit with a number is probably more useful there. But on the UID search and UID fetch side of things, I think that's not simply documenting existing server behavior. That's kind of introducing new server behavior, and it's introducing it in a way that's kind of unilateral, that doesn't need client agreement, or doesn't need clients to enable and opt in, which, as Daniel was saying, seems kind of likely to break older clients, which are no longer being maintained. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I just don't. I also don't feel like there's been a precedent of RFCs that have done similar things where.
There is one actually, append limit.
Yeah.
But it probably doesn't have as much of an effect as this extension.
I feel like append limit is also more in the side of, it's a long-standing thing where servers were enforcing an append limit already, and this was just kind of allowing notification and a way to notify clients
Mhm.
of limits that were already being enforced. Whereas this RFC, I feel like as, you know, if you were kind of looking through RFCs you can implement as a server, right? Like, and you see this one, you kind of assume that because it's an RFC, it's kind of safe to implement. And I feel like this is one where if you were implementing it without really considering the impact on your customers, which may be using older clients, you know, it's likely to introduce new behavior that's going to actually break a lot of those clients.
Right. Well, I think at minimum,
That's why I said we need to have
we need to have more text explaining that.
But see, this conversation has been happening for 25 years. That fetch one through star is a bad idea. And that conversation's been going around with Mark Kristen many times saying that that's really stupid to do because it could take forever. So
I will have a presentation on this if we get to it.
there you go. So yeah, I think as long as we put enough warning in here that you're going to break old clients, be aware of that.
Okay. All right.
Yes, slide.
Shall we move on and try to get through the rest? I understand it's more of a general feel about the document, and I think it's a valid comment. Next slide, please. And I'm kind of picking from the easy stuff. I know it might not be super consequential because if we cannot make decision on bigger things, it might not make a difference. But so Philip asked why we're not reusing limit. So to be honest, I forgot about that limit was defined. But the example was given as was actually it's defined more generally. So it's any kind of limit, and the example given was limit on number of keywords in the mailbox. The other part is limit syntax doesn't have anything after it. So if you're parsing limit, you'll need to update your parser anyway to support this. I suppose you can make an argument that limit is few characters less than message limit, but and in regards to last question is, can limit response code be returned on target? Okay, yes. The answer is yes. So do you feel strongly about this? How do you feel about this?
Not as strongly as the enable issue.
Okay.
But I guess, I mean, there's maybe a small thing where, like, you know, there could be clients out there already that are, that understand limit and, you know, use that to behave in a certain way. Like you give back a limit and then you don't try the exact same response, or you wait for a certain period. And then now if they just start receiving a message limit, you know, whatever, you know, error correction capability they already have is going to be kind of circumvented by this new response code that they won't understand.
I'm happy to change it to limit. It doesn't really bother me. If you think this will help, I think that's an easy change. But as I said, the only problem is that it will have extra parameters that are not defined for the original limit. So clients can still potentially break if they are not, you know, depending how their processing work, if they look for, you know, limit in square brackets, then they will handle something. If they look for limit in, you know, open square bracket limit and then space or close bracket, and then they ignore the rest, that they might be okay. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is also kind of tied into the enable discussion, because obviously, like, if the client is enabling, then we can obviously use the message limit, right? Because
right. Okay.
Daniel, can you also just return vote? And then we have clients that I also don't feel strong.
Okay.
Let's see, because you have still 4 slides, maybe you finish within 3.
I know. Sorry. Okay. I'm taking somebody else's time. I understand. Okay. Next slide. Right. So what Philip said was an interesting comment that different searches might give different results. The thing is, I needed to look at the text to figure out whether your statement is correct for the text as written. I think it's not correct because the text says you limit how many messages you iterate over, not how many matched. But let me double check, because if it's not, then that's definite. Well, we can argue how much of a problem this might be. So if it's just counters, that's one thing. If people start deleting messages depending on how many they find, that might be slightly more problematic. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're, we kind of started this discussion. So the argument against enable is because the server will enforce this anyway, so it doesn't matter. Syntactically, the server is not, the way response codes work is clients are obligated to ignore response codes they don't understand. If it was a new response, that would have been different, but that's for response codes, that's a requirement in the base spec. So technically, we are not breaking existing clients syntactically. Okay.
Philip again. So yeah, the server will enforce its message only regardless of enable. Again, this goes to the question of if there's existing server behavior that we're creating a mechanism for them to communicate versus encouraging servers to adopt new behavior.
Right.
And I don't know that there's a lot of servers out there right now that will return a partial set of what you did a
Right.
UID fetch for. So yeah, I would, I don't really agree with that point.
Okay. There is one procedural thing that we can try if it will make people happier. I don't know if it would.
Keep moving here.
Okay, so one possibility is we can publish this as experimental instead of standard stack. I know not every consumer of RFC will know the difference, but that kind of different grade of the document. So this is something we can consider. We can take it offline. We'll talk about this. So I just bring this up in case it will make people slightly happier if this is done this way. Okay, next. I realized that, well, document didn't say anything about expunge. Close is even worse because close cannot really fail because, it has to succeed. Can it return message limit? I think it probably should, the same way as expunge. That's my proposal. Just to keep everything consistent for now. Which makes it slightly weird in the sense that if people rely on close to expunging all the messages, they will have to reselect mailbox and close it again, to do it in a loop. I don't think, but in practice, I think it's going to be a very edge case, so I don't think it's problematic. It doesn't matter. Next slide. All right.
This is Barry. I hadn't noticed that expunge was part of this. It seems very bizarre for me to do, say, a store deleted, whatever, say 1,000 messages at a time throughout the mailbox and delete 2 million messages that way. And then to say expunge and have them not get expunged.
No, you will get 10,000 or 10,000 expunged, and you'll get message limit. So you'll have to repeat it basically.
No, that's bad. That's a really horrible.
Okay, so what's the alternative? The same way as this copy, just not.
Expunge is not affected by this. You expunge. I agree that it makes sense to have this on copy and then fetch, not on expunge. That's just bad.
I'm kind of two minds on this. I think we should kill expunge because we should only ever use UID expunge. But
But it doesn't matter. If you've got a whole bunch of messages labeled deleted, when something goes to expunge the deleted messages, it should expunge them all. That's a background task.
Sorry, because no time. So.
Okay. Can
so
you
go to the
Okay.
mailing list?
yeah, can you send a message on this? I think I actually had a comment in my draft saying that maybe expunge should be different from UID expunge, but that's a good point. Okay.
Next, the UID.
I haven't done anything on this, so nothing to report. I was concentrating on message limit.
Okay, so
we'll get to it.
Save 5 minutes. Thank you. So next is process.
I think I can save us a couple minutes here too. So while this is coming up, so either in London and or Yokohama, we discussed the fact that sometimes you get emails with calendar attachments that aren't truly ITIP, meaning there's no method property in there. A lot of these you might get from an airline. You can go right to the next slide.
This one?
Yeah. You could get these from an airline or a doctor's office or something. So there was a interest to extend this action to handle those kind of cases. So in doing so, I've changed the name of this from process IMAP just to process calendar, and I added an additional tagged argument, non-ITIP, to tell the interpreter, yes, it's okay to deal with non-ITIP messages. Those are the, I also made it data format agnostic. So IMIP in its definition pretty much deals just with iCalendar. In this case, if somebody got a JS calendar attachment, and the interpreter knew about it, it could go ahead and process this. So that's pretty much it. If these are non-controversial changes, I think this is pretty much fully baked and possibly ready for working group last call. Hearing no objections, I guess we take that to the list. Thank you. No, I'm next. I'm next.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's a new syntax. It's pretty straightforward. There's no reason to waste any time on that. Oh, I take that. Yeah, it's not ready for working group last call. I need to add some text to the security section, pretty much dealing with calendar spam and that kind of stuff. So I will craft some text and post an update. Okay.
Okay. So after meeting, you update the draft, then ready for working group last call. Thank you.
I think the next one's me too.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
So while these slides are coming up, a little background on this draft. So I have a current draft that's a working group product, documented a Civ snooze action. And in reviewing it, Pete correctly mentioned to me that the action within this special snooze mailbox was not very well defined. So in doing that, I took some of Neil's internal spec on a JMAP snooze method, which had better definition of the mailbox. And I also added a straw man for potential IMAP snooze command. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So this basically, I presented the JMAP method in the JMAP method group or working group a couple days ago, and there seemed to be interest in moving forward with that. So this would be similar to that. Again, this is just a straw man, new capability. there'd be a new snooze mailbox attribute, which would coincide with the snooze role in JMAP. And this would basically flag the mailbox of where this is where the snooze messages are going to arrive. And that would come with some additional semantics. Next slide, please. So this is the strawman I came up with. This is certainly not cast in stone, but basically 3 pieces of metadata would go along with the message when you snoozed it. You'd have the awaken time, a possible mailbox to awaken it into if it was not going to be the inbox. And then you could have a set of flags to add and remove at the awaken time, which is all of these are identical to what was already in the Civ snooze draft and what's in the proposed JMAP snooze draft. Next slide, please. So this is the restrictions on this. Basically, the only way to put a message in the snooze mailbox is to use the snooze action so that you actually get the metadata that goes along with it to tell it how to awaken. If you try to append, copy, or move, the server would reject that. But you could move messages out, which would effectively unsnooze them. So the metadata that goes along that message would be removed, and you're effectively awakening it. The only issue I have with this is how to reflect this in the access control list if the server supports that. Does this operate outside those bounds? Because if you remove the insert right, it would prevent a copy or move, but it might also prevent this if it's defined to use the same access control. So a couple open issues. The other possibility, as opposed to having a new command, would be to combine move and annotate so that you move the message in via move and then you'd annotate it with the metadata. I don't know if that's better or worse. I think that's probably better off being one action that does everything together. But bottom line is there any interest in trying to create a snooze action or command for IMAP? I know there's a bunch of limitations of snooze out there. I don't know if we could come up with something that would work with all implementations. This could be a wasted effort, but since I was doing this for JMAP, I thought it might be worth throwing together. Barry.
I don't have an opinion on that part, but do we have any other special use mailbox types that have limitations
To this, but there's certainly special use mailboxes, but that would limit what can be done with the messages. I'm not aware of any.
So I think this would create a new complication in implementing this sort of stuff that doesn't exist already. Just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, totally agree. The reason I went with a new command is because in order, you need a way to add the metadata that tells the server what to do when it awakens.
It might speak to whether a server would be willing to implement this, given the extra complication.
Right. I see Pete squirming, which I expected he might be.
This speed resting. Boy, it sounds really weak. Is it on?
Yes, it's down a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So I said my piece over in JMAP. I think this is a hacky, icky way to do things, especially because you're adding this bunch of semantics to a mailbox that happens to be a special purpose mailbox with restrictions and magic things that happen. I would rather this be just an annotation that goes with the message, and it's basically a delayed action on the message, and it could be pretty much anything. That would be the best way to do it, but I'm perfectly willing to be in the rough here and say that's enough.
So just to clarify, so you're saying implement this as move plus set of annotation.
Well, I'm actually suggesting that you could implement this as annotation saying do action later, and that message can live anywhere, not just the snooze mailbox. And I know why it's implemented this way, and I'm not gonna, throw a fit at last call or anything.
Yep.
Just registering my ick.
Point taken. And I feel your ick.
So now that Pete said that, that may be part of what I was trying to get at. What we've generally done with the special use mailbox attributes is you put metadata on the message, and then the special use mailbox is just a collection, a view of all the messages that have that metadata.
Right.
And that may be more what we want to do rather than actually moving it in. If somebody wants to implement a snooze mailbox where you can look at all your snooze mail, that's fine. But the key to it is that the messages themselves have metadata.
Okay, so are you suggesting then that if it was a new command, snooze just does the annotating?
Yep.
And how the UI or the server wants to display that as implementation defined? Okay,
We have 4 minutes left, so go quickly.
Lexi.
Just when I hear annotation, are we talking about annotate extension or?
It's annotate experiment 1. It was the one that does message annotations.
And that's the thing, for me, it's probably too high barrier to implement, even though I probably have.
That was the one thing that occurred to me when I originally thought about annotate.
So probably, new command as specified now.
I guess it doesn't necessarily have to interact with annotate. To Pete and Barry's point, yeah, the snooze action could just put metadata on there in some way, shape, or form, whether it can expose via annotate or not is immaterial.
Neil Jenkins, I just want to counter what Pete was saying here, that it's not every client I've seen essentially does move this to a special folder.
Right.
And so if you want other people to implement it, doing something completely different makes that far less likely. And also making things more generic, again, tends to make things actually less interoperable because there's more things to do, and so people just less likely to use it. So if you want it to be useful, I would actually argue that we should constrain it.
Hence my throwing my hands up.
Yeah, but sorry about that.
So within 1 minute, with another point.
That clients implement deleted in all sorts of ways of moving the message somewhere and whatever. And IMAP's model is you set a flag on the message, and anything else you do is just client action.
Okay. Take the rest of the list.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide, quick. So, okay, thank you. Take it to.
4549 this.
So, yes. You. 3 minutes.
No, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I can just stay here. Well, we had this discussion earlier that the document is from 2006. We have various extensions and also much bigger mailboxes. It's way more common to leave your mail in your inbox and then delete it. At least I know a lot of people who do that. So next slide. Suggestion is to say that if you have a really big mailbox and you only care about last 10,000 messages a day, don't bother trying to do one colon star, even if it's just for flags. Not a good idea. So I think also if I read the draft, I probably find other things that are slightly out of date or compatible. So I'm not asking to adopt this, but I suggest I adopt the draft of this.
For context, what RSU we talking about? I don't know. The number didn't help me.
I'm at synchronization with information RSU.
So you will read a draft?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, 30 seconds left for any other business.
Okay, so finish. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna head down there pretty straight up. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
So we just leave the room, then it's okay.
I get it. It's you know, I mean, easiest. Sure. It just seems like right. I know exactly how to accomplish this on the client side. As if I was still writing this. But I mean, I know what this